Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Kathy Vega on the podcast. She's an IFBB Physique Pro. She's also a GLN coach. But, we're here to talk about her bodybuilding journey, how she got into shape, and what that's led her to. But most importantly, Kathy, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Absolutely. So first of all, I got to ask, what's the weather like where you're at right now?
It's cold and gray.
What part of the country are you calling us from?
Elko, Nevada.
Nevada. Cold. Okay, let's be honest. So I'm in Minnesota. So what is your definition of cold then in Nevada?
Oh, well, it's not anywhere near where you're at. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's actually unseasonably a little bit warm here. It's about 30 degrees, I think, but normally it would be around the 10 to 0 degree range. So I am enjoying that. But before I depress everyone with my winter woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle?
Well, I've always been an athlete. I was always involved in sports. I did junior Olympics in track. It's been ingrained in me my whole life. And then I got divorced in 2007. And I decided I was going to do something just for me. I always worked out, but I decided to hire a trainer. And after about a week, he was like, "Have you ever considered competing?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And I had that total myth that all these women have is like, "I don't want to look like a guy." And so he's like, "I'm not talking about that." So I went to a show. I was like, "Oh, this looks actually really fun." So that's where I started, and I started with figure, and after about a year, I was like, I work hard, and so I want to show more of what I've got, and I like the posing, I like the choreography, so that's where I went into the natural bodybuilding. Well, I actually started in NPC bodybuilding, but they would always tell me your conditioning's better, your definition is better, your symmetry is better, but your frame is just too small. So I went into the natural, went into bodybuilding, and then they came out with physique. And I was like, that's me. And so that's where I started. And then a few years ago, I decided to go to the MPC, back to the MPC, and I've been really successful. I have a new coach that I started with, Anthony Altamarino. Almost 2 years ago in February, and within 4 months he took me to an overall title, and then a year and a half took me to my pro card. So
That's awesome. What would you say was probably the biggest difference that he brought on when you finally started to have him as your coach that really elevated you to that next level?
well, he put a lot of red meat in my diet, and I had not eaten red meat in like a long time, except like the night before a show. And so um, my muscles just really responded to that, and my physique just flourished. So
We can even see it right now. Her arms are just basically popping out of the camera right now. It's unbelievable. But when you are getting started in the gym, I always love to say, if there were 100 people walking into a gym, there's 100 different ways as to how those people would get in shape, whether it comes down to, their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. What was your journey like, sort of figuring out what worked best for you? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, "Wow, you look amazing. What did you train for that body part?" What works best for them, 99% of the time might not work as good for you.
right. Well, everybody's bodies are totally different. So you do have to find what works for you. Like keto works for some people, carb cycling works for some people. Just a typical basic um, diet works for some people. Myself, I never cut carbs. Into nationals this year, I cut carbs one day, and that was it. And it's the conditioning. If you keep yourself conditioned all year round, we have those people that want to do the big bulk and they put on all of this weight. Well, with that, you stretch out the skin, especially when as you get older, you're stretching out that skin every single time. You're putting on more fat every single time. So it's harder each time that you come down to get that elasticity to come back, especially as we get older. So I stay within 10, 15 pounds of my competition weight. And that seems to work best for me. Everybody's different, and their way of doing things is totally different. So
Well, I like to compare it also to sort of like being a mad scientist where everyone's trying to concoct their own potion that works best for them. And, everyone is vastly different, which brings me perfectly into the next question. I mean, I love to talk about genetics on this podcast because so many people, I think, especially in this day and age, they look at these photos of people on Instagram. They say, oh, I want her arms or I want his abs. Or people just don't realize that they can only be the best version of themselves. You're not going to end up looking like someone else. But a fun question that I like to add on to that is that, everyone always has that one body part when they get started in the gym that really, really takes off. And then everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind that they have to train into oblivion to get it to catch up. I mean, I'll give you mine first. I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of working in warehouses, and you either got a really nice back or you quit. But I'm also 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just shot. Where I mean, I still have friends to this day who, when I walk into the gym, say, "Oh, hey Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year?" And then, calves don't even get me started. That is the number one genetic thing where, I mean, I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow an ounce. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Well, actually, my legs are my weakest point, which now, after about a year and a half, have become one of my stronger points. My back has been one of my strongest points, but my legs, they're very strong. But to get those cuts to come out and pop, it was it was awful. I was like, I am lifting so heavy, and why is this not happening? And then just the different technique that I have with Anthony, um, it made all the difference. We do a lot of volume, but also very heavy. And so that has been my ticket. And then a lot of plyos in with that. So with the combination of those, uh, it's made a huge difference. It was a game changer.
Well, one of the training techniques that I mean I've used throughout my entire journey, but it really got reinforced a lot on this podcast because so many people love to use it and they love to talk about it, is time under tension. Do you like to use a lot of time under tension in your training?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. That way you're feeling that muscle. It's keeping that contraction, the muscle's under tension that whole time. So I don't ever use, very rarely, momentum. I'm always controlling both negative and positive. So
That's very important too. I mean, that's why I always it's the funny thing where sometimes you see these bodybuilders in the gym and they're lifting, like 20-pound dumbbells if they're like really, really huge guys, and but they're just doing it nice and smoothly, and it really helps with the contractions, and it really helps, burn those muscle tissues, and really helps them. I mean it's helped me immensely, and I recommend it to everyone that I talk to that really wants to get in shape. But a question that I love to ask now that we're past New Year's, I mean, we're January 4th, but New Year's resolutioners, I mean, I always say January is the worst time to be in the gym if you're, especially if you're a regular. Now, luckily, at home I have enough of a workout set up where 90% of the time I work out at home. But being that it is January and there are all these New Year's resolutioners coming in, I mean, it feels a little bad because you look at it and probably maybe only like 10 to 15% of them actually accomplish their resolutions, and so many people just go in and they give up. What advice do you have for people going into the gym right now for New Year's resolutions on how they can maintain those goals? Because I find a lot of times people just tend to overdo it and then they're burnt out after a week or two.
I always tell them, take it slow. Don't try and do everything all at one time. You know, First get into the gym, get those workouts in, then gradually start changing your diet, um, so that you can see the results from those workouts. Because once they see that result, then they're motivated and they're like, oh. And if you're questioning anything, ask somebody that you see that actually is knows what they're doing, and everybody that I know anyway is more than willing to help. If they have a question, just come ask somebody. Just say, "Excuse me, I see that you're doing this. What is that for?" Or whatever. Or get a trainer that is a trainer that actually knows what they're doing and cares about your progress. Because there are people out there that they're counters, or they're watching their phone, or they're having their coffee talking to other people, not really paying attention to that person. So you want to make sure that you find a trainer that is really going to take that interest in you.
Oh, absolutely. And just being in the gym, I mean, I've never had a trainer myself, but just I see that all the time too, where you have these disinterested trainers, or if you find someone really with your best interest, that is one of the hallmarks of actually succeeding and actually helping you in weight loss. But one thing that is very also misunderstood about the bodybuilding lifestyle is that so many people don't realize that just to be able to go on a prep, you have to be in such a great deal of shape that I mean, I mean, going on a prep, you are notching things up to an extreme level where, I mean, your diet has to be perfect. You have to get all of your workouts in. I mean, everything just becomes so scientific and specific. What was it like when you went on your first prep, and how has that evolved as you've gone on and your career has evolved?
Well, in my first prep, I felt like I was being starved. There was one time I had a meal of 20 almonds. I was like, what? And so I would be like a zombie by and so it was no wonder that my body didn't respond as well as it should have. And then now I eat probably 2,500 calories a day, and I'm only 5'6". I weigh about 135 in my off season. And so I'm eating a lot of food, but I'm using all of that energy and it's going to the areas that actually need it. So,
Yeah, it's just so fascinating with that, and I gotta say, still at 5'6", you're one of the taller competitors that we've had on because a lot of them tend to be on the shorter side. So that, do you feel that it might be a little bit harder for you then to develop that muscle than say someone that's maybe like 5 foot tall that I had on the podcast yesterday?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And actually, I gotta make. I used to be 5'6". I am 5'5" now, according to them. I was like, what? No, on the basketball roster, I was always 5'6". And they're like, no, you're 5'5". I'm like, okay. So I'm shrinking,
Yeah. What
but
position did you play in basketball?
I was a guard.
Yeah. Yep, I was a power forward, but yeah, at my high school. We had two guys that were 7 feet tall, so yeah, there's no way I was gonna ever be in the center position. So yeah, it was. But they were the clumsiest people you'd ever meet in your entire life. So it was just, we were still we were a decent team, but yeah. So I love that you played basketball as well. But going into bodybuilding, I mean, so many people have so many myths and stereotypes about it. Did you have any myths and stereotypes that you believed before you went into the sport? Before you finally realized that, oh, hey, it's not like what the most of the general public might think about it?
Yeah, well, the biggest myth was that I didn't want to look like a guy. I didn't want to get, great big huge and look like a guy. That was my biggest misconception. Unless you're taking a lot of stuff, you're not going to get huge like that. So um, I believe it looks really nice on a woman to have those rounded shoulders, nice arms, and that tone, in their body, rather than just being a cardio queen.
Well, we're gonna bust this myth right now. Can you give us a front double bicep, and we're gonna say, does she look like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or does she look like Hulk Hogan? Look at that, everyone. That's absolutely insane, and she doesn't. I mean, that just busts the myth right out. I mean, that's just incredible. When I gotta say, I was gonna wait until later on to ask you, but how old are you?
I'm 58. I was 58 in August.
And she has arms like that and looks like that. That's just, come on, everyone. That's not even fair. I don't even want to talk to her anymore. That's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, and that just shows, I mean, what hard work and dedication can do. And I mean, if I could just say that every single time, that you're not going to look like that. I mean, just the amount of effort and dedication that the sport takes. But going off that, I mean, the probably the most positive thing that happens, I think, so much more than to women than it does to men, is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we've heard so many stories on this podcast from women who have made life-changing decisions. It's really helped them maybe be a little bit more assertive. It's just really helped them better their average lives, or their average everyday lives, I should say. And I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact your life. How have you taken that confidence boost from working out and use that to impact your life?
Well, it just makes me carry myself better, makes me more confident in my everyday life. Able to when I first started, I was one of those that didn't want to go and bother anybody and ask them anything, or go up and give them advice. Once I felt a little bit more comfortable, I'd see something going on, I'm like, But now I see it, and I'm like, I want to help that person. And so it's really helped me in what I do with my online coaching is I see people's confidence just bloom, and it's such an amazing feeling to see that person take everything that they're learning and just use it as a confidence booster, because there's so many women that just feel very intimidated in the gym, which it's sad because more women would go into that weight area, because you'll see a lot of women just on the cardio machines, and it's like approached one gal, it was years ago, and I'm like, hey, come take my group training session. And she's like, no, I'm good on here. I'm good on here. I said, no, come on. So I finally talk her into it. Well, now she is so addicted to lifting weights that it's made a huge change in her life and in her physique. So um, the lifting weights is just going to enhance your body. It's not going to make you huge and big.
I always say, yeah, if you can help out others or do something in that effect, I couldn't recommend it more enough because it's I mean, you just get such a great feeling. And I mean, yeah, anyone out there who's thinking about doing that, I highly recommend it. But going back to the bodybuilding aspect, I mean, I always say one of the things that I would have never guessed in a million years before I started having guests on is that for so many of these guests, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than their working out, it's harder than their nutrition. We've heard that from so many guests. And I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Um, that is like my favorite part of this whole process. I'm kind of a ham when I get up there, but learning the posing, it's hard. And you're holding those poses and you're shaking, you're cramping up on stage, and you're like, just please hurry up and change the pose because I am dying here. But um, it is all ever evolving, and you can always learn something from somebody else. Um, I always watch different clips of different female physique competitors, and I'm like, I love that pose. So I'll look for it and I'll try it. And sometimes it doesn't work for your body, but just always trying to find something new to bring into that routine. So,
Yeah, and so many people don't realize that, and I love that you brought that up because some poses don't work for other people's bodies. I mean, it's all about just like with the whole entire aspect of this podcast too, where it's all about finding out what works best for you because you're not going to be like that person. So yeah, and that evolves with so much in bodybuilding too, where it's even with the posing too, where if you do a pose that maybe someone who might weigh 50 pounds more than you, I mean, it might not look as good on you as it does on them. I mean, it's just all about finding what works best for you. And another aspect about the posing that I love to bring up is because, like you were talking about, you are going to get more sore. From a lot of people that I've had on say that they get more sore during their posing sessions than they do in their actual workouts because the body is not meant to be in that flex of a position for that long of a period. Does it just take a lot of, just practice and just kind of like with working out where, the more you do it, the better you get at it? Is that the same thing with posing where your body just gets more used to being in that flex state for a certain amount of time?
yeah. And if you, throughout the whole off season, in between sets, I'm always posing. Whatever body part I'm working is when I will hit that pose. I'll work on it, I'll hold it till I'm shaking. And then your muscles kind of remember that. And so it does get easier, but it's still, when you get depleted and you're ready to go on stage, you're still going to feel it. And so you're right. The next day, I'm like, what the heck? I am so sore.
I know we've had people compare it to like being hit by a bus. Basically, the next day they wake up and they're just dead. But yeah, and plus being a high school football player, I can relate to that feeling. So that's I mean, I can't imagine though what that must be like though being up on that stage. But out of your poses that you do, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
The back double bicep is my favorite. And my least favorite is the quads and abs.
Yep. We get quads and abs all the time because I always say that is the most awkward pose. I mean, it's just super hard to make that look natural, and so many people struggle with it. And yeah, that's by far been like 90% of our answers have been with like that. But as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, my thick Norwegian skin being from the upper Midwest, where I mean, even today we don't get that much sunlight out. I mean, it's like what, 5 degrees outside today, so I'll just be staying inside basically all day. I mean, the weather is just not our friend up here. But I mean, I always say I've never been tan a day in my life, but bodybuilders get tan. And I mean, we've heard so many stories on here of, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out when you get that tan on. What is that experience like for you when you get that tan on? And like everyone says, you really get to see the final end product.
It's pretty cool. It's because you go in and, like, I don't tan on a normal day, but my body absorbs that tan really easily. So I get dark really easy. And so I see that, and then you're seeing these lines that you haven't even seen. You're like, oh, I thought I looked good, but look at now. I can see every little detail, which is really is what the tan is for, is so that it can enhance your work. and your physique.
Oh, 100. When I always say too, it's like, yeah, if you were had have my skin tone, and then all of a sudden you know that you're looking amazing. I mean, it's like just can't imagine what it's like when you get that on. But another detriment though is that I mean, you can't sit on anything, you can't lean up against anything. I mean, you just basically have to become a human statue, like I always say. So it's like it just even adds on to the checklist of what these bodybuilders have to go through just to be able to walk up on that stage. And I mean, it's just that is one of the more impressive parts of it to me. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be, like my up and coming bands and musicians or my health and fitness guests, for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on. What is that feeling like for you when you get to walk up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
That's the part I love. Like I said, I'm kind of a ham. I enjoy I enjoy putting it out there, and it's awesome because you're getting to show all of these months and months of hard work, and you're getting to show people, no matter what age you are, that hey, look, this is what you can do if you really, really put your mind to it. And it's a really fun feeling. The posing part is my favorite, and then especially the routine. That's the absolute favorite. And when I'm doing the routine, that's where I'm in my element. Um, I just love that part. So,
I'm just shaking my head because she's twice my age and she still looks better than me, everyone. So this is just absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, this part of these podcasts is to serve as motivation for me too. I mean, it's not just motivation for everyone else out there. I talk to these guests and I'm like, okay, I really need to get to the gym now and really, really, really work out. So no, and I can't even imagine what that feeling must be like because yeah, it's just to be out on that stage and really just to show off what all that hard work has been because like I said before to a lot of my other guests, for these bands that I have on, I mean, they can be on stage for up to 2 hours and they perform, like once a week, but these bodybuilders, a handful of shows, maybe a year, and they work months upon months for, and sometimes they're only on stage for like a minute or two. So just that in and of itself is just so impressive that they go through all that just for that short amount of time. And that even, I mean, if anything on this podcast shows the dedication that these competitors have, I definitely feel like that does. But you recently won your pro card, and for anyone out there who's a first time listener, for a lot of these competitors, the pro card is the highlight of their career, just because that is the affirmation that all that hard work that they put into the gym has finally paid off, and they can compete in pro shows, and it's a big deal. What was that feeling like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my god, I'm a pro now?
I just kind of looked around at first because I was like, did they really call my name? So, it was it was a phenomenal feeling. And but after prejudging, I was so stoked because they had moved me to center stage and hadn't moved me from the get go. And so when I came off stage, my coach is standing there, Anthony, and he is looking at me and he's like, I don't want to jinx this, but you killed it. And I was like, I know. I said, right. And so I think I was more excited at that point because I felt so encouraged and so amazed that I didn't get moved. And so that was pretty cool. And then when I came off stage and he was like, "We did it!" And I was just, and it was so it was just, and to have your coach there, that is a huge part of it. A lot of people's coaches weren't there, and you could tell that they were a little apprehensive, and but it just kind of kept me nice and calm. So I think that's really important, for you coaches out there at something at that level, because that was my very first national show. And so I just, I was expecting to be nervous as heck, but with my coach Anthony there, I was just chill. It was weird. It was just very strange to me.
What did you have to eat that night to celebrate?
All I had was some spring rolls and at the Hard Rock and two mojitos.
So you really
Yep.
went hard going have no, I'm just kidding. We have so many. I mean, like I always said, if I ever compete, especially if I won my pro card, I'm going to a Five Guys with $1,000 and just saying, hey, I'm buying you out for the rest of the night. I'm gonna feed me until I die or pass out. Either way, I'm gonna get my money's worth. But yeah, and that also leads me into, I mean, another myth that a lot of people don't realize is that you're not going to be able to maintain that stage look 24/7. And so many people that I have on, when they first started out, that was a big struggle for them because they didn't realize that ahead of time, especially if you don't have a coach. That's why I highly recommend anyone out there who's just getting started, find a coach, because they're able to talk you through all that and make you aware of that so that you aren't going through what some of the guests that I've had on have went through. But people just don't realize that look, you're not going to be able to maintain it. We've had so many people talk about, how they might get a little depressed or they might get anxious, realizing that, hey, as hard as I've worked to look like this, it's not sustainable. What has that experience been like for you, and how has that evolved as your career has gone on? Just accepting the fact that I am not going to be able to maintain this look.
Well, I had my very first coach. I did gain a lot of weight afterwards because he wanted to get me bigger, and I just that was not my way of doing things. I was like, I am so uncomfortable. I felt like the puff marshmallow man. And so I was like, I'm not doing that again. So from that point on, I have always maintained like, about 15, maybe 20 if it's really over my stage weight, because it is a mind thing. A lot of people get really hung up on that, and they aren't able to come out of it, and so they want to do another show, but they can't get back in that prep mode because they realize how hard it is, for one, and they don't like how they look afterwards. They want to have that stage. And so I try and tell my girls, no matter what, you cannot. I said it's not healthy, and you have to be able to keep that in your mind that yes, you are gonna, but you can gradually do it so you're not going all out and then 2 weeks later look like you've never competed in your life. So that's my advice to people, is just be aware of what's going to happen afterwards and slowly reverse yourself back into eating more calories, more carbs, more fats.
We have heard so many horror stories on this podcast of people who have put on, like 40 pounds within like a week or two afterwards, just from going off after. And that's I mean, like the whole theme of this podcast too is that it's so much more of a mental game than it is a physical game. And that proves it, more than anything else, that it's a lot of mind games in this sport. But two of the questions that I love to ask, every guest that I have on, for me, there were so many positive things that happened, from working out and getting in shape. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water, anything that's sealed on tight. You're the go-to strength person. I mean, still being at home for the next few months, I still, have to help out my parents every time they bring home groceries, being the good son that I am. Has that been a similar experience with you? I mean, even though we know your age, but still, anyone that still looks that great, I mean, I would assume that you still get asked to do favors all the time.
Oh yeah. And then I was moving recently, and my son's like, "Can you help me move this couch?" And it's a big, huge leather couch, and it's very awkward. And I just looked at him. He's like, "You're a bodybuilder. What?" And I'm like, I am, but it's awkward.
Yep.
He's like, "You should be able to lift this by yourself." And I'm like, "No, not."
It's funny because I could never imagine asking because so I'm 6'3" and my mom is 5'3", so I could never imagine asking my mom to help me lift or move anything. So just that scenario in and of itself is just it's really really funny for me. But yeah, it's a never ending struggle, especially for me where I said, like being 6'3", it's a double edged sword. Where I mean, you're gonna get asked to move things. If I had zero muscle at all, if I lost all of this in one day, the next day they'd still be like, oh hey, tall guy, you're still gonna come help us move stuff. So yeah, it's been one thing that I've had to get used to. But going off that, I mean, let's be honest, you are not the average looking 50-plus-year-old woman. I mean, if I can't imagine what it must be like, especially if you're dressed like you are right now, walking down the street. I mean, you are going to get stares. I mean, I always say you become like a mini celebrity where, I mean, people's attention it's human nature to focus on stuff that, they might not be used to seeing. What has that been like, sort of getting used to that fact?
I mean, it's kind of weird sometimes when you're just out in public or whatever, and somebody's like, "You're Kathy Fitness." I was on my way to nationals, and I'm sitting at the airport, and I'm helping this elderly lady find her terminal because she can't find where she's supposed to go. And this guy keeps inching closer and closer and just kind of staring. And so I was like, okay. And so he comes up and he's like, "I know you." And I'm like, "You do?" And he's like, "You're Kathy Fitness on Instagram." I was like, "Oh, hi." And he's like, "I follow you." And it does it, goes on. And so that part is really weird. A lot of times I'm totally oblivious to people around me. My sister-in-law gives me a bad time all the time. she's like, "You are so oblivious." And I'm like, "To what?" And she's like, "People are just like flipping their heads looking at you." And I said, "Well," I said, "I don't know." I said, I'm doing my thing."
Oh, and that's a great way to have it because we have people that are way too aware of that, and it can kind of, not drive them crazy, but it can really mess with them where like they might not want to go out as much because if you're going to get asked, well, it was kind of like me in college where I was a lot bigger in college than I am now because starting this podcast and this 40-hour week job that I have is not that much time for working out. I still go like 3 or 4 times a week, but I couldn't go to a bar without getting asked to arm wrestle. So it got to a point where I couldn't even go to any more bars because it was just like, or just drunk girls just randomly coming up and feeling my arms. And I'm gonna be honest, I was a little vain back then, so I'd pump it up for them a little bit, but that was the 20 to 21-year-old version of me. But it was just, yeah, I can't imagine what that must be like for being a bodybuilder because it's like that. I mean, year round, especially, but being that you do live in a warmer climate, now I say warmer, knowing that, like I said, in Minnesota, it is 5 degrees. Do you ever feel that extra added pressure to look lean and in season year round, knowing that you are going to have, at least in my opinions, good weather year round?
Well, we actually have snow. We've had snow for the last day. So, inside, I'm always like in my tank top and my workout pants. Outside, I'm always bundled up. So if I'm outside, people don't really see the physique. And then I, take off my sweat, jacket and everything. And they're like, "Oh,
Then there's the jaw dropping moment that they have in movies and everything, where there's like, oh my
yeah,
god,
yeah."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny sometimes. And I had a friend, she's like, "Well, how's it feel like to be a pro?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "It's just me." I said, "I'm not a different person. I'm still the same person."
You should have been like, I woke up and everything was different. Like I'm taking on this whole new person. Yeah, that would have been. I
Yeah.
mean, but yeah, yeah, it's just like it's just another day because you got to go and start competing at pro shows now. And I mean, but there's just so many great things that go along with that. But you led me perfectly into the next question that I always love to ask is, fit guys have their own problems when it comes to clothing, and believe me, we've heard hundreds of them. But fit women, it is even more significant when it comes to finding clothing options that work for you. Because I always say, the moment that you said that your shoulders were really the thing that really took off in the really beginning, I was like, okay, dresses don't work then. I mean, jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that, especially with your arms. I mean, anything long sleeve, I could imagine would be very, very hard to find in clothing sizes. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for that fact? And the fact that, I mean, if you're putting on, that 15 pounds in the off season, you might need a different wardrobe then for your off season and for your in season looks.
Oh, definitely. Especially in my jeans, because my legs, they get big. And so I have these big legs, smaller waist. And so I'm like this. So in order for it to fit my legs, I have to get a bigger size. And then the waist is like humongous. So you're like cinching it up. So I've just found that if you find the spandex type jeans, the jeggings, things like that, that look like jeans, but they have all the stretch, that's what works best.
Yep. Like I've said too, if anyone out there is thinking about inventing something like that for fit women or for fit guys in general, I mean, I know that there's so many companies that do that, but I don't think there's any that do it like really, really right. Where if they make like jeans just built specifically, just on my podcast guests alone, you'd make $1 million because everyone has talked about how they would be more than willing to buy them. So anyone out there, get on that. But another thing that the general public doesn't realize is that for bodybuilding, you're not looking to just be the strongest person. I mean, you're looking to be the most aesthetically pleasing person. So a lot of times people don't realize that, they look at powerlifters, and I'm just going to be completely honest. I've had plenty of powerlifters on this podcast, but some powerlifters don't look like they've ever worked out a day in their lives. And they
Right.
go into the gym and they're benching, like 400 or 500 pounds, and you're just like, okay, yeah, that's not even fair. But uh, I just love to bring that up because I think one problem that a lot of bodybuilders face is that people just assume that they're the strongest people in the gym as soon as they walk into the gym, where they don't realize that a lot of them are, because being a bodybuilder, I mean, if putting on that muscle, you still get immensely stronger than the general public. But a lot of people just don't realize that you're not going to be, setting these world records in benching or setting these world records in lifts, because it's a different style of training that a lot of people just aren't familiar with. But when you do train, do you ever max out, or is it a lot of it just repetition?
Most of mine just repetitions. I do a lot of supersets. I do a lot of volume. Sometimes I go a bit heavier, go lighter, or heavier with lower reps. But I found that the volume and the heavy, and it's not light, but it's not like huge weight. Um, I find that my body responds better to that because you are like almost like a sculpture. You are sculpting your body. You don't really want that big trunk. You want that tiny waist. You want the broad shoulders. You know, you want the quad sweep. So you have to just isolate those muscles more than a lifter does. Power lifter, he just wants to get that weight up. I try my best never to use momentum, because you see these people in the gym and they're using all of this momentum to get all this weight up. And I'll go over to them sometimes if I know them well. I'm like, hey, try this weight and try it this way. And they're like, I can barely lift it. I said, well, there's a reason for that. And so you're actually working the muscle that you're intending to work. So, yeah, I mean, I don't care how strong, people are like, well, how much can you bench? I said, not a lot. And I really don't care.
I
So,
usually just respond to that by saying more than you. That's just how I respond to that usually. But yeah, yeah, and again, it's so different for every person because, and I mean, I've had a 5 foot tall power lifter on this podcast who weighed like 100 pounds, and she was putting up more weight than a lot of the bodybuilders that I have. I mean, it's vastly different, and yeah, it doesn't matter how much you can bench. If you're really basing your etiquette or your gym life based on how much you can lift, then you're doing it wrong. First of all, you're not even just going for right reasons. But I did a poll right after New Year, since we are a few weeks, or no, we're like a week and a half removed from New Year's, and I said, "What's one body part that everyone wants to work on the most?" And I gave them 5 options. It was arms, abs, legs, butt, and back, and arms won by a vast amount. And as we can see, you have amazing arms. What do you like to train for arms to get them to look like that? And what advice do you have for people that are starting working out if they want? Because for so many guys, I feel that arms that's the one thing that they want more than anything else.
well, I do a lot of free weights, and then I start with those, and then I go to the cables to keep that muscle under tension. I don't go real heavy. I really concentrate on that concentration, the isometric hold. Uh, I see people, just swinging those weights like crazy. I try and control everything that I do, especially on arms, so that I do feel that contraction through the whole motion. Um, so yeah, and then I go heavy on all of my other lifts. So if you're going heavy on your other lifts, you're also working your arms. You're also working the biceps and the triceps. So, I only work arms maybe once a week, if
And it's
even.
well, and here's where you embarrass everyone else. Can you give us a front double bicep and everyone? She's 58 years old. For God, look at that. That is just unbelievable. 50. I mean, oh my God, everyone. We all got to go to the gym right now. This is just ridiculous. I mean these guests that I have on, some of them they just depress the hell out of me. But it's so great for them. But I mean, everyone else, go and get your work, and that's motivation in and of itself. But Kathy, I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Well, that more people are more functional. Some of those people get so much muscle on them, and their cardiovascular is almost zero, um, which is really scary to me because I'm in it for my health, to feel better, fitness. Whereas some of them, just to walk across the street, they can barely walk across the street, and they're breathing hard. And so I'm a big person on functional fitness as well. So I do a lot of strength conditioning, just so that I keep my endurance and stamina up, because I don't want to feel like, oh my God, I did one rep and I can't even breathe. So I think that is like the main thing, is just, people be more aware of your health overall.
Well, especially with some of the guys where it's like they have trouble fitting through doors, and it's like
Hmm.
you got to really think about that before you really compete. And yeah, sometimes you really just look at them and you're just like, how that. I mean, as much as everyone wants to look good, there comes a certain point where you're like, at what point does it get too much when you're just too big, where you can't, like you said, you can't function. Some of these bodybuilders, yeah, they have zero cardiovascular. If they were to even run a mile, some of them would probably pass out. Where it's
Hmm.
just because you look like that doesn't mean you are the most in shape person on the planet. Well, as a matter of fact, sometimes it's the opposite for the people that are really, really huge and muscular. That it's hard. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And another one that we hear of is just a lot of the times there's a general lack of parity when it comes to judging, where I would say if you were to compete in like back-to-back shows, one judge might say, oh, we want a little bit more of a leaner look, and then the next show that you go to, they want a little bit more of a fuller look, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, good luck putting that on in a week if you want to do it. So that's one
Yes,
thing that we hear of all the time as well.
I find that all the time. I'll go to one show and my conditioning is just like crazy, on target, and they're like, "Oh, we want more fullness." And then the next show I go to, "Oh, we want more conditioning." It's like, okay, which one is it? Because I have a hard time staying full, and so because my conditioning comes in so tight, and in physique, that's kind of what they the criteria says is they really want that conditioned, ripped body. And a lot of times I get knocked down for it. So,
No, that's one thing that I would definitely change as well. But now, what is one body part that you are looking forward to improving the most before you compete in your first pro show?
my legs.
Yeah, that's again, good luck with that. Like I said, that is my number one problem area. I mean, just hearing that just makes me cringe. I always said for me too, like I said earlier on the podcast, with calves, I could inject pure muscle into them and they wouldn't gain an ounce. So, I best of luck to you with that. I mean, I always remember every day after legs, I feel like I'm gonna die and I have trouble walking. So that's definitely the most painful out of all the workouts that I do, which I always find is funny because it's like for a body part that we use more than any other body part, especially with walking, you'd think that they'd be a little bit more used to maybe getting a workout in because it's like I felt if we walked on our arms or whatever, it wouldn't be that hard. So I'm going to have someone on and ask them why that is because you think that would be just a muscle group that would just be in such great shape because it's being used constantly. So yeah, I have no idea on that front. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? What were some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
Well, I would really like to, like I said, I'm going to do my pro debut. Probably will be July in San Jose. Then I'm going to do the Masters Pittsburgh show, Pittsburgh Pro, in September. And the pro show in San Jose is going to be open, so I'll be competing with whatever age. So I would just like to get that experience, get that feel. But in Pittsburgh, I would like to be in at least the top 5.
Which I mean, just looking at her right now, if she can get any bit better, I mean, she's gonna win that. I mean, I have a video that I'll show up to you guys of her doing her posing practice when she won her pro card, and it's just, I, for her age, I've not seen anyone near that condition, and for a lot of people, I've never seen anyone near that condition. It was just watching that. That was one of the things when I first thought about having her on because I just scroll through people's Instagrams and I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, she's that old and she looks like that. I was like, she has to come on and share her fountain of youth secrets. So it's just incredible what the body can end up looking like. But I gotta ask, when you started in bodybuilding, what was your family's reaction like? What was your son's reaction like when you said, "Hey, I want to become a bodybuilder now"?
They were very supportive, but they were also worried because um, in my first couple years, I didn't know anything. I was always an athlete. I always played basketball, volleyball, track, softball. It was just I was an athlete, and so but I didn't know about the nutrition part of it. Well, the first coach, some of my meals would be like 20 almonds. And so I would be a zombie by the end of the day. And so they were like really worried about that, especially my mom. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so now they've gone to all of my shows and they're very supportive and they think it's pretty cool. So um, I've been lucky. My family's been very supportive in the whole journey, because it's something that I wanted, and so they looked at me and they're like, "Okay, well, if that's what you want," because I got divorced in 2007, and they, were behind me all the way. So
Well, and especially having that support system behind you. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times that has helped out other people because we have heard stories that have gone both ways, where the family might not be as supportive as they would like to be. So yeah, that's just such a great benefactor that a lot of people don't realize. But how do you also feel knowing that you have set an example for so many people that at any age you can get into shape? Because a lot of people, especially women, because I have a lot of women on this podcast, they talk about how once you reach a certain age, like around 50 or so, a lot of them just give up and they just say, hey, this is what my body's going to look like the rest of my life. They just become a little complacent. how do you feel knowing that you have inspired people that, you can get in shape at any age?
Oh, it's a great feeling, and I love the fact that I can inspire and motivate young people too. I have many young people come up to me, and you're such an inspiration to me. We watch you, and we're just amazed that you can do what you do. And I said, you can do anything you set your mind to. You don't. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you want something bad enough and you set your heart to that, it's possible. You just have to have the right tools and go for it.
And you have to have that dedication too that a lot of people
Very
don't
much.
understand. But lastly, I mean, what is your relationship like with cardio? Because for me, I'm one of those people where you get me on that damn treadmill and I am just I no thanks. No. I mean, I used to go out with someone who's an ex-marathon runner and hey, you want to go out for a run? I always said, is someone chasing me with a knife? Other than that, that's the only time you're gonna catch me running. I just walk on the treadmill. But what is your relationship like with cardio?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I do not love cardio. I love strength conditioning to where I'm doing AMRAPs and intervals and things like that. And to walk on a treadmill for that drives me crazy. If I'm hiking, I'm good. If I'm riding my bike outside, I'm good. But if I have to be on a machine to do my cardio, and I know, with my prep, I have to, but I do the Stairmaster most of the time. Um, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of just cardio on machines.
Well, riding my bike is my go-to thing of cardio. Obviously, I can't do it during the winter, but during the summer, I mean, get my workout done, in the late afternoon, and then I wait until it gets dark, so then there's no dogs walking or there's nobody out, and then I just go on a long, hour-long bike ride before I go to bed, and it's yeah, I bike ride is definitely my favorite form of cardio because and that's a good lesson for a lot of people too is that mix it mix it up and find what works best for you. I mean, just talking about working out, I mean, a lot of my friends, they don't want to lift weights, but it's like you don't have to lift weights then to get in shape. You can go do yoga, you can go do any type of other forms of exercise. I mean, there are classes in every gym that have dozens of different techniques that people do whether it comes.
Exactly.
So, I mean, just cycling. I have some people that they go and do those bike classes in the gym and then it's just find what works best for you and just because one thing doesn't work doesn't mean you have to give up and say, "Oh, I just can never get in shape." I mean, I've talked to people that have lost hundreds of pounds, doing, just cardio work or just doing different types of classes or just doing lightweight. I mean, it's so different and like we were talking about earlier on the podcast, it's just about finding out what works best for you and you're sort of like your own mad scientist just trying to concoct your own potion and figure out what works best. But before we wrap things up, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to?
Well, yes, of course, my coach, Anthony Altamirano. He is amazing. He's been behind me from day one. He's been so supportive and just he believed in me from the get go. And so, with that, it's huge. Also, my family and my friends that have always been there for me and stood behind me in everything. It's so great to have that support system.
Yeah, again, we talked about this before, but that support system is so huge and that's for anything in life. Just having that support system and if you're lacking in that, just definitely reach out to people too because a lot of people are there for you and care about you. That's another message that I like to give out, but I mean, lastly, what is your goal? What is your like schedule looking like now when it comes to getting ready for a show? When do you have a date ready for when you're going to start your prep? What is that looking like?
I just started my prep. We're going to do about a 6 month prep. So I'll be trying to add a little bit of fullness. Right now, I'm about 2,500, 2,600 calories right now. Um, so I'm lucky in that respect because I do get to eat a lot of food and I like to eat. These people talking about the intermittent fasting, I can't do it myself. I like to eat too much. So yeah, so we're gonna just that's kind of our method is we go into it nice and slow so I don't have to do anything crazy like this last prep that I did for nationals. I did my peak week one day. I only had no carbs one day. And I probably didn't even have to do that, but we did it just for good measure. So if you take it nice and slow, you don't have to get crazy and you don't get all cranky. And then July, the end of July is where I'm looking at San Jose Pro.
Well, that is right. I mean, my birthday is on the 15th of July, so maybe we'll have you on right before then to just give us a little
Okay.
update before you compete. I mean, I think you're going to do great, but a 6 month prep, good God. I mean, I thought we have guests on that, they have their 12-week preps, and it's just like, oh my God, I feel bad enough for them. But at least you're going in lightly. Like, I thought when you said you just started and it was 6 months, I was like, oh, are they going to go hardcore the whole 6 months? I was like, oh my, I would feel so bad for you if that was the case. But no,
No.
and that's just so great that you have that, all set up in stone. And again, we wish you nothing but the best in everyone. If you're interested in anything that she has, I mean, I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below. Go and give her a follow. I do warn you though, you will be inspired to work out and get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies. And again, Kathy, just keep doing what you're doing, because I mean, just with your posts, it's just so inspiring, and I can see so many people really, get a lot out of your account, and just keep being that inspiration for people, because especially in this day and age with the obesity crisis going on, a lot of people just need that inspiration, and you're providing a great one for them. So honestly, keep it up, and thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.